Hi everyone, welcome again to the Bible Project podcast. And we've reached Genesis chapter 4, and today in the short message we're looking at verses 6 to 8. So the last time we came together we saw that Cain and Abel brought their sacrifices to God. Abel trusted God and believed what God said, and he brought the appropriate animal sacrifice. But Cain decided to do it his way. Cain thought, I'm not going to do this the way God asked, I'm going to give up the sacrifice that I want to give up. So the story continues in verses 6 and 7, where it says this. Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, and you must rule over it. So Cain's reaction to God saying he wasn't satisfied with his offering is anger. And then in these verses the Lord asks him, why is he angry? And he also warns him that sin is lying at his door. He's saying that sin is like a wild beast and has a desire to rule over him, to control him. That tells us that sin will always have a desire to rule over us also, to control us. Instead of sin controlling him, he should have been controlling it. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever got angry? Everybody gets angry, of course they do, but God says that we always remain responsible for controlling our anger. Now it's interesting to note that anger is often spontaneous, and I believe that God gives us enough wriggle room in that he understands we might not always be able to control the immediate anger reaction. But this tells me we are still responsible for our subsequent action when anger raises its ugly head. Interesting, it says sin is lying at the door, which suggests to me you have the choice of opening or closing the door on anger when it appears. Trust me, we really need to deal with anger, because look where anger can potentially lead. Verse 8. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, Let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Now Hebrew experts will tell you that this verse is worded in such a way as to indicate that this is premeditated murder. This meeting in the field was prearranged. So instead of listening to the Lord and dealing with his anger, Cain lets that anger fester into hatred and then into murder, which he begins to plot. Sin entered the human race just one chapter ago through the eating of one piece of forbidden fruit, and now within one generation has escalated into violence, death and murder. This is the first murder in our Bible. And I think it's deeply significant because it tells us that initial sin in chapter 3 led to murder and violence by chapter 4. That ought to tell us that if sin is not dealt with, its results are catastrophic. Its result is always violence. Or to put it another way, behind all conflict and violence we see in the world today lies sin. Violence in any culture is always the result of rebellion against God and willful self-assertion. I believe the Bible teaches that violence in society results from rebellion against God and people demanding to come before God on their own terms. We start down the road of disobeying God and becoming to him on our own terms, but we end up with things like pride, envy, jealousy, hatred, violence, and even murder. Someone once said the first murder was the outcome of what was supposed to be the first act of worship, because these events were kicked off by the bringing of offerings before the Lord. How ironic is that? Cain didn't listen to the Lord. He chose to go down the road of jealousy and anger, which then turned to hatred, and hatred turned to violence, and it ended up with murder. So what happens next? Will we find out next time? Okay everyone, that's it for this time. Thank you for joining me. Now, the place to go to connect to this and any other ministries I'm involved in is the podcast notes section of the audio podcast on the Buzzsprout website, or by looking in the episode notes section on whatever app provider you use. Within that, you'll not only find the transcript of each talk, but you'll also find links to all the ministries and the way to connect with us, including the Facebook page, my YouTube channel, and links both to this, the daily podcast, and the Living in Faith Everyday podcast, which is a weekly roundup of all the various Bible study and talks that I'm doing over the period of the preceding week. You'll also find links there to my SoundCloud and my Bandcamp page, where I create the background music and the sound design of these broadcasts. But with that, all I'd like to say is thank you for joining me, and I hope to join with you again very soon.